This is the Sacred Business Podcast, a show for spiritual women identifying entrepreneurs and leaders. I am Sora Suriano. On this show, you'll meet inspiring guests, get some business tips, experience sacred practices, and listen to my personal lessons as a business owner. As a transformational business coach, powerful medicine woman, inspirational speaker, fire igniter, heart whisperer, and world traveler, I've helped hundreds of women around the world heal their stories and transform their sacred businesses. It's time for us to claim our rightful and equitable place in entrepreneurship through scaling our business efforts. You are worthy, divine sister. Welcome to episode 2. We have an amazing guest who is a dear, dear sister and friend of mine. Her name is Jenn Lederer, and she is so fun, and she will provide you with so much amazing food for thought that it is going to rock you. So I am so excited. Hey there, Jenn.
Hey, Sora. Woo woo.
So before we even begin, can you share, based on how you're feeling today, who you are and what you do?
Oh, that question just points to the fact that you know me. Because it does depend on the day. Oh, man. I love laughter. I'm just going to come out and say it, all right? I'm having this amazing love affair with laughter, and I'm into it. I'm also noticing how serious I just got when talking about laughter.
Seriously.
Oh my God. It's like, let's go, Lederer. Yes, it is this thing that has kind of integrated itself into all areas of my life and business. And I didn't necessarily know why it was happening when it first started to happen. And I didn't trust it. And I tried to make it go away. And then I finally surrendered to it. And it feels real good in how I show up on the stage and for my clients and for my friends and all of it.
Amazing. And before we even go into having everyone hear me share a little bit more in depth about who you are and celebrate all of the things that you've done, I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing a little story, because it's going to help us kind of tap into who you are and the complexities that we have as just being human beings. And can you share a little bit about a moment in time when you were little when you realized that you had enough and something had to change?
When I was little and I realized I had had enough and something had to change. This is interesting. I'm scrolling through the Rolodex of memories, and
I like to keep you on your toes.
I know. I love this. Something had to change. I keep coming back to this moment where I'm on a softball field that is in walking distance from the house I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And it was in this time in my life where I was really into softball, but I was also really getting into dance. And the games kept landing on the same nights as dance. And so I kind of knew that this decision was kind of coming and I was going to have to choose which one. And then layered on that, I really bonded with my dad through all of the softball game. And then my mom used to be a dancer. So it was this whole I was like, whoa. And so I walked to this softball field and I ended up sitting, no one was there. So I crawled up to the spot where the announcer always is, where I was never allowed to be. And I went up there and I could actually see my dance studio from there. And then I found this little family of mice. And Sora, I don't know how any of this connects, but when I saw...
I love it. Keep going.
When I saw this little family of mice, I was like, oh my God, all I want to do is take care of these things. So I went and found a box and put them in the box. And I brought it home and asked if we could keep the mice and raise them and make sure they were safe. Meanwhile, I had 2 cats at home. And so I guess I went to the softball field and met mice, and they helped me kind of figure out that I was done with the field and I could take a piece of it with me and nurture it. And then I committed to dance, Sora.
Yeah, I love that because there's so much to that, right? So part of you realized, or even now when you're sharing, softball was something you loved, but it also meant that you were sharing something with your dad. And then dance is something that you really loved that I know you continued with, which we'll talk about, but that had something to connect you with your mom. And so it was really about taking care of your family. And then you see this family of mice and you want to take care of them. It was just like that was going to help support you in letting go of a tangible thing that you needed to do in your life based on your schedule.
This is why I love talking to you.
I could analyze it for you.
Yes. Oh God, the webs we weave. And that makes perfect sense. And I love that I haven't thought about that in years.
Wow. I love when things like that come up. You have no idea why a memory comes up, but they do.
Yeah.
Now, memories or different snippets of time, these are things that are quite valuable to you. Am I correct, considering that you are a motivational comedian?
Oh yeah. Storytelling and stories are everything. And the truth within the story is really what it is.
So how do you get to the place of understanding a story, getting to the truth of it, and then sharing it in a way that doesn't feel like you're just tracking everything minute by minute?
Yeah, right. Because everyone wants to have like a 6-series HBO special about their keynote.
Or when sharing a story, it's literally a minute by minute play. So by 2 minutes in, no one is actually paying attention to you anymore.
Right, because you've stopped to describe how dry the grass was as you walked there.
Exactly.
Yep. Okay, so I first want to share something that an acting coach told me many moons ago, which was comedy is just drama flipped on its ear.
I love that. Can you say that one more time so people can really hear that?
Yeah, comedy is just drama flipped on its ear.
Mm.
And so that immediately gives you this incredible visual of just a totally different perspective. Like, what if you just took your head and leaned your ear on whatever table is in front of you and looked around at the room? Like, that's an automatic change. So that's the first thing I do when, especially if you know the story really well, if it's something that you've shared so much, it's ingrained in your body, you're like fully there in it when you tell it, there's a good chance that there are millions of angles in which you've not looked at this story. And those new perspectives not only can give you new ways of sharing it, but oftentimes it can give you new takeaways, like what just happened to me when you brought me back to that softball field. And like, it just, because I wasn't trying, I allowed this thing to come through and give me a new perspective on that moment in my life. And these new perspectives don't actually require the details. You know, your audience does not require the detail of the experience to understand the essence of your experience. And so, you know, you also have to trust that your audience is capable of meeting you where you are.
Yes, totally. That you don't have to give them everything because they won't be able to follow you. They always will, because it's really more about the feeling and the connection rather than jotting down and keeping track of all the things.
Yep. I heard that exact feedback from Amy Poehler. I was at a talk back from, I don't know, something. I was there and she was talking and I was listening. And she said when she's writing jokes, that's one of the first things that she checks is to make sure that she's not trying to explain the joke or worrying that it won't land, because some jokes just aren't going to land for some people, but that doesn't mean that it's not a joke and it wasn't funny.
So true. That it's not about whether or not everyone is going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. There's something that you did also that I think is so important for entrepreneurs to remember. And when you were telling the story, there was a moment where you laughed and you're like, I don't know why I'm telling you this story.
Yes.
And you shared that and you kept going. And there's a reason why you shared it. And so can you talk a little bit about even that part where a lot of the times we get to a point where we think, I don't know if I should do this or why I'm doing this. I feel uncomfortable. And they either keep themselves silent around it and they don't call out the elephant in the room, or they just don't speak. And so this would prevent so many others to hear something that is valuable to them, that they will resonate with in their own way. How do we stop ourselves from just allowing ourselves to be who we are and that it not be perfect?
Yeah, I think the seeking in that question when we say, why am I don't know why I'm even saying this, is because we are unsure of its purpose. Like we weren't there at the board meeting at the top of the sentence when the ego decided whether or not this was going to be, viable or valuable to the person that you're sharing it with. And so in that, we start doubting its worth or why it needs to come through. And Martha Graham, who is like the core teacher and creator of modern dance, has a quote that I will paraphrase that basically says, it's none of your business if you're good or not. It's your business to let the energy flow through you and to keep the channel open. And that to me basically nails the question that you're asking. When we do come up against the question of, is this worth it? Is this going to lead to anything that's, quote, valuable to my business bottom line or even to the takeaway of the audience? Maybe the takeaway of the audience is they're supposed to feel uncomfortable with you for whatever reason. And so when you can get out of the way of needing to know its purpose and just your job is now, like in that moment, my job was to notice, hey, I have no idea why I'm saying this, but my job is to keep the road open and to allow my mouth to keep moving. That's the work. And so it's a shifting of what you're here to do. You're not here to be valuable. You're here to be.
Yes. Yes to that. Oh my goodness. So let's take a moment and really drop in and hear about Jenn, because based on what she says, you can already feel why she's an impeccable motivational comedian, leadership strategist for creative entrepreneurs. Jenn infuses comedy, heart, intuition, and no BS business strategies that help her client and audiences laugh their way through a breakthrough. Jenn is on the forefront of bridging the wellness and entertainment industries through mediums such as motivational comedy and her documentary titled Just Enough. Jenn's work has been featured by Forbes, Huffington Post, Yale, Google headquarters, and comedy clubs around New York City and the tri-state area. I love this because you do, just by speaking, weave in a sense of fun, play, curiosity, and no BS. You're incredibly inspiring and motivational. And you have a way of really breaking things down so that from like a strategic level, when you're looking at yourself as an entrepreneur, you're realizing what are the best practices to help you stay in alignment.
Mm-hmm.
So good for you.
Thank you. Whoa, it took long time to get here.
Based on that, can you share a little bit? Because I really do love when people share not only their successes, but what got them there. Like a little snippet around your past to help people realize it's not about the fact that you had a quote perfect life or that, I don't know, just things randomly, magically just happened and you weren't conscious of it, but that sometimes it takes a little bit of magic. Sometimes it's a little intuition. Sometimes it's a little bit of intentional work, whatever that looks like. So I'm wondering if you would share a little bit of your journey.
Mm-hmm. Yes, a solid mixture of all of that, and more magic gets mixed in each year and each moment as I learn to trust it. I moved to New York as a dancer it really was my catalyst to get me here. When I was graduating high school, I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do with my life, because who the hell does? But I knew I was good at dance, and I knew I wanted to get to New York. And so, it's much more likely that people might ask, why are you going to New York with a business degree, rather than why are you going to New York with a dance degree? That felt easier to sell. So I did that. And all through college, it was this interesting dance of feeling drawn to the stage, being noticed, being almost cast, and then sabotaging myself in like the final callback, or, not showing up to class and yada, yada. And I brought that to New York with me. I thought, you know what, once I'm professional, once I have this degree under my belt, then I'll start showing up. And I came to New York, and, everywhere you go, there you are. And I wasn't showing up to classes and to auditions, and I went through a bit of an identity crisis when I realized I'm not a dancer. And from a place of once a dancer, always a dancer, yes. But I wasn't acting like one. I was not moving through the world like one. And that led me to a slew of side jobs, and I wrote an album, and I wrote an off Broadway show. I started practicing my voice and singing, but in doing all of that, I was still so scared of being seen. And so that showed up through a lot of drinking, a lot of drugs, a lot of never getting on stage fully sober ever. And that led me down a pretty dark road of doubt. And in hindsight, one of the things I love the most about my story is that I can always see how, even when I was dancing in the darkness, I was the source of light. Like in all of the groups I was in all of the, dark and dangerous places that I ended up, I always had at least one person in the room look at me and say, "What the hell are you doing here?" Like, one of these things is not like the other. And I feel like it's you. Like, what are you doing here? So I always had these moments of my guardian angels kind of showing up and nudging me like, hey, we get that you're here, but also remember that there's something else. And so I've always had that seeker in me that wanted more and was open. I've always been open to trying. So I was selling comedy tickets on the street that led me to a talent management job because I pitched a guy who knew a guy who had a company. And that moment, that saying yes to that is like the kind of pivot point in my life where I was like, okay, I can harness all of these parts of myself. Even though I'm 24 and no one's taking me serious, I can be a business owner, build a company where I'm representing actors for film, TV, and television, and still be creative and mentor. And that job was my master's degree that kind of set me up to be able to take a leap into this entrepreneurial world that I'm in now. And, Sora, you met me right when I was like a puppy whose eyes are just starting to peel open.
I remember that.
And I was just starting to get to know all of these parts of myself that I had brilliantly hidden from the world out of safety mechanisms and survival mechanisms. And, you were one of the first witches that I met that, you looked at me and you were like, yeah, I get it. You're funny. You're a badass. What else?
I remember saying something similar to that.
And I was like, who the fuck?
Totally.
But it's, again, you were one of those people that looked at me and you were like, yeah, I see you and there's more. And so I'm so grateful for especially the women, it was mainly women who were always mirroring that back to me and helped me look at, I experienced sexual assault when I was 12, and I never understood how that impacted the way in which I moved through the world until I did, until late 20s, when I was like, but hold on, why am I so afraid to be seen? Why am I so good at putting everyone else in the spotlight? And I can't seem to give myself permission to do that. And asking that question is what got me into therapy. It's what got me to your intensive. It's what got me working with a life coach and asking for help and receiving help and understanding that I was worthy of not always struggling. And like allowing all of this integration of me being big and loud and funny and intuitive and soft and quiet and a business mind and a creative mind. Like, who am I to be all of that? Oh yeah, I'm Jenn Lederer. And I have a bunch of people in my life saying, yes, go be that. And so, I hope that in being that, I give someone else the same invitation and the same permission to be like, yo, what about all of your parts? What can that be?
Yes, totally. And that's one of the things that I love about having a space for each of us to tell our stories, because our human nature is always going to be to take a moment and already have a preconceived notion about someone. No. So whether it was someone listening to your intro story, to your charismatic way of speaking, your robust, deep, lovely laughter, to your bio, they'd say Jenn Lederer must be this extroverted, charismatic, ready to go out there, pitch everything, fearless person. No wonder she's, quote, successful. And parts of that in any human being are truly deeply seated in their personalities and their essence, but it also can come from a wound. And so if you excavate that, there was an inner part of you that was afraid, that was doubting, that didn't want to be seen. And those are important areas for us to remember about any given person.
Mm-hmm.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And so with that, I know that part of your journey really has been to stand up for others, right? So like even your clients, you were there to help support them in growing their career. And with your clients now, right, I'm sure you're here as a proponent for them and them being visible, or when you're in corporate and for yourself. And I wonder if you can share a little bit for those who know that they're such a deep proponent for others and they want to be able to be out there in the world and share that, whether it's pitching an idea or being on stage or asking to be invited at Google themselves too. How do they go about doing that?
So I'll take it from someone who has never spoken a word in their life, on a stage. How do I go from knowing I should do it to actually doing it? And this is applicable to people who have been on a bunch of stages, is to do it. Like we live in a world where you can turn on a Facebook Live, an Instagram Live, a video on your phone and talk into it, and you can talk. And you can start to understand what it is you're here to say. But more importantly than that, in my opinion, is how you want to say it. And this is why I'm obsessed with getting people to talk all the time, like especially when you think you have nothing to say, because that's when we're digging through what we think is the crumbs, and it's really where we get to the diamonds of our message. And through showing up and showing up and showing up, by leading workshops for actors about branding your headshots and resumes, that I can directly link to the way that I talk about a business owner branding their website and how they go in for their photos for that website and what story they're telling and how you brand a person as a business. So if I wouldn't have started talking back in 2012, there's no way I would be here now, because I came to it through doing it and saying it and looking back and saying, oh, that resonated. Oh, people really light up when I make them laugh. Oh, I really light up when I make people laugh. How can we use that? How can we build on that? So many people stop themselves step one because their TED Talk isn't immediately created. And it's like, all right, cool. What if you gave your TED Talk 10 years to come through, 1 5-minute Facebook Live at a time? Could you start then?
Yes, because it's true. We see these immediate things like all of a sudden this person has a TED Talk, or all of a sudden this person has a book. And I get it. And what I think you're saying, which I find true, is what about taking a good amount of time to notice what you actually want to say? Like, what is the real truth that you want to say? And that takes practice by just starting to speak about a whole variety of things. But until you're ready, why go on that stage and talk about what you think you're supposed to talk about rather than finding a topic or a personal experience that you have excavated and now you really understand?
Yeah. And you can also talk about things that don't matter at all. Like I run a 21-day video challenge, and day 1 and 2 are talk about a thing and talk about a person. The talk about a thing is what people have the most fun with because there is zero pressure. So sit down, look to your right, look to your left, pick a thing, pick it up and tell a story about it.
Totally.
Like that, because when you get to the big important message, you want to actually be able to hold it with the same neutralized energy as you're holding that paperclip that was on your desk.
Yes. Amazing. Totally. One last thing I'm curious about, which is the comedy industry. So I don't know it very well, but I would assume that much of comedy, until maybe recently, are people getting on stage and maybe being a little self-deprecating and it therefore them being funny. And so I wonder, what is it that you do and how have you been shifting the paradigm of comedy?
Yes, it is a it is a very interesting corner of the entertainment industry as a whole. And I would say that the women especially are starting to shift it. I'm seeing my brand of comedy, like Lisa Lampanelli, for example, used to be known as the Queen of Mean. Yeah, like that was her whole brand. And now, Sora, she's a life coach and she's known as the Queen of Meaning.
I love it.
Yes. So when she announced this on Howard Stern of all fucking places, and when I saw this go down, I immediately reached out to her PR person and I was like, what is going on? Can I get on the phone? And they were very receptive. And so I'm seeing women take the lead, but then I'm also seeing myself go into these places and experience what I'm perceiving as some resistance and some like, oh, this is the chick that basically represents everything that's going wrong with comedy right now. You know, the snowflakes and safe spaces, no one can take a joke anymore. And it's like, actually, it's not fucking about that at all. Because what I represent with motivational comedy is understanding the tools that help you be in discomfort. And we are in like a crisis of capacity in this world right now where no one thinks they have the capacity to be uncomfortable. And so I'm like, oh yeah, there's a whole misunderstanding about what a safe space is even about, first of all. And second of all, motivation is still hilarious because the truth about walking through this fire is messy as hell. And you can be truthful and authentic without being self-deprecating. And it's still really funny. So I'm dancing with that middle school stuff that I went through of, do they like me? Do I fit in? Am I supposed to fit in? No, of course I never fully fit in. And how much of this is actually just my old wounds coming up trying to scare me out of shining versus what they actually think of me, because there hasn't been a lot of people that are like, hey girl, you don't belong here. Like I'm just filling in that story for them.
Right.
So, stepping into this thing has been such a learning experience for me in so many ways.
Well, I'm so glad that you stepped into this. I mean, I love and always thought that you were not only funny, but you had such great insights and you can be profound and deep while also understand that there's humor in life. And so I am such a big fan.
Thank you, Sora. That means so much.
Thank you. Thanks for now. Oh, it was so great to have you on as a guest, Jenn.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Thanks for listening to the Sacred Business Podcast with me, Sora Suryano. If you love the show and desire to know more, check out sorasuryano.com. I would also so appreciate it if you would leave a love note, aka a review on iTunes. Now, remember, you have the power to create anything. You are able to bring forth beauty, abundance, and grace in your business and life every day while living a life that is wild, free, and calm. You are worthy, divine sister.